Well, typically I give about 5 minutes for other persons to join, but I'm just going to let them know that we're starting. And this evening I'm going to go fast because I think most of you guys already know this stuff. It's just perhaps me sharing a little bit of this, the tactical strategies that I would have used in actually increasing my own income. So really it's more sharing my personal experience. And because I have been at all three stages that we're going to cover tonight, then I think I can give a pretty balanced view of the strategies and the success that can be gleaned from implementing them. So, with that said, welcome to module two, I think it is, module two of personal financial makeover. The first module we dealt with expenses, which is one side of the budget or one side of your income statement, if you want to call it that. And then the second side is the is this that we're going to look at tonight, which is income. So tonight we're focusing on income generation and growth. We're going to be looking at strategies to increase your income, and this will be whether you are a recent graduate, an employee, a subcontractor, self-employed, or an entrepreneur. For me, I think that income is the most important of all of the wealth building tools. As much as persons might want to say, oh, it's your stocks, or oh, it's the business or the shares that you have in different companies. In my opinion, most of this will fall flat if you don't have an income. And that also goes for insurance. So to me, in an income is the most important of all the wealth building tools. Most of us know what an income is. It's really just money that you get for performing a task. And there are actually five different types of income. Most of us are going to be familiar with either one or two, but I'm going to take you through all five of them. And you can look at them as different rivers that have different sources, and then from each of the sources or each of those rivers you have different streams. So when people speak of multiple streams of income, you can have a single source of income that is providing multiple streams, and we'll talk about that. 1 second, I'll just look at the comment. Okay, right. So Monify is saying that it's active and passive that most people are familiar with, but there is also interest income. And most companies that are in the business of banking or loaning money, that's actually what they record. They record an interest income. You as an individual will earn interest income from your savings, from treasury bills that you might buy, CDs that you might buy, or bonds that you might buy. You'll also get portfolio income, and this will come in the form of either dividends or capital gains on the stocks or the investments that you buy. Portfolio income can also be derived from selling real estate. Then you have residual income. So residual income is income that you get from things like affiliate marketing or network marketing, or royalties for either books, songs, digital art, and so on. So those would be the three that most persons are not necessarily familiar with. And of course, we're all familiar with the active income, which is what you earn in terms of your salary or your commissions. And then the passive income is what you will earn from rental properties. Royalties can also be considered passive income, but it is looked at, it depends on where the royalties are coming from. So it can either fall under passive income or it can fall under residual income. Am I not moving? Okay, great. So with that said, let's look at first the employee and what a person can do as an employee to increase their income. There are five strategies that I'm going to detail here, and you can see them. The first one is to ask for a raise. Second, to negotiate salary. Third, to take on more responsibilities in your job, basically adopt a new role. Number five, switch jobs. And then, sorry, number four is switch jobs. And number five is to switch industries as a whole. as an employee, the easiest way to increase your income is really to ask for a raise, especially if you've been working in a role for an extended period of time. Now, typically, companies will give you a raise every year. In some companies it's called a cost of living adjustment. In other companies, it's called an inflation adjustment. So they'll raise your income just a bit to kind of help you keep up with inflation. Typically, that raise is much lower than inflation, though inflation might be 5, 6, or 7%. That raise is going to be between 1 and 2.5%. If you're going to ask for a raise, there are a few things that you can do in order to best prepare yourself. Number one, you want to ask around in the market and find out what are the going rates for the job that you are doing. That might mean a formal survey as well as it might mean an informal survey. Document everything that you're doing in your job, especially if there have been added responsibilities as the role has evolved over time. And document your achievements on the job. So did you lead a project that has resulted in any efficiency improvement or has added significant value in the corporation? Those are things that you will use when you're bargaining for an increase in your salary. Another thing to do is to quantify your accomplishments, and you want to be able to put a number beside any initiative that you would have led or anything that you might have done. This could be as simple as you fixed the printer while it was down, and if it hadn't been fixed, it would have been down for, I don't know, 30 days or whatever, increasing the cost as well as the inefficiency within the organization. Quick story here. When I worked at the nuclear center on UWI campus, we had a machine that cost about 600,000 US dollars. And that machine would give us problems ever so often. And one of the things that I did was, using my background in electronics, I actually lobbied the director general at the time to allow me to fix the machine instead of us calling in an expert from overseas, which would have cost us somewhere like $5,000 or something just to fly them in. That the fix cost literally less than $300 because all that was missing was one of the pins was not properly soldered to the circuit board. And me and my then supervisor, we took it out, looked at the circuit diagram, realized the pin wasn't aligned, soldered it. The solder probably cost us $200. So in that way, we save the organization on the low end, at least 5,000 US, and on the higher end, close to 600,000, which is what it would have cost to replace that machine. Other things that you want to do in terms of asking for a raise. You want to prepare a case, which is what we would have spoken to earlier. You want to practice the conversation. It can be daunting approaching your supervisor or a senior manager to say, hey, I want a raise. And don't ever approach the conversation with animosity or with aggression to say, I've been in this role for X amount of time, and so I am deserving of a raise. We spoke earlier about quantifying everything that you're doing in order to justify the raise. So that is the approach that you want to take. And you want to maintain your composure in that conversation. The person who best maintains their composure is actually the one who walks out winning that conversation, whether or not the request is considered or denied. Another strategy that you can use is to negotiate your salary. So prior to taking on any new role, whether it's a promotion that you're getting in the company or a lateral move, don't ever take a lateral move without at least having the conversation around negotiating your salary. And in this case, again, you want to understand what is the industry paying. Find out from other companies. Look at the industry as a whole and canvass the industry, whether through informal interviews or through casual conversation with persons who are in the same or similar role as you, such that you can get an idea. So as an example, I switched jobs about 2 years ago, and a few months after I switched, I was approached by another company to join their team, and their initial offer was higher on paper than what I was getting at my current company. But I still negotiated that, and as part of my negotiation, what I did was I reached out to some of the other senior people at other competing companies and asked them, how much would you pay a financial analyst or a senior financial analyst? And they told me the range. And that's really what I use to inform the negotiation. Ultimately, they came with a number that was okay for me. But when I weighed and we'll talk about this, when I weighed the qualitative factors as against the quantitative factors, it didn't make sense for me to actually make that move. So to put that in perspective, for one, I currently work remotely, fully remotely. So I don't have to go in office any at all. That organization that approached me, I would have to go in office at least 3 days a week. So that would have meant gas, lunch money, traffic, time lost. And when I did my assessment, those things, the amount that they were paying me above what I'm getting now, those inconveniences, if you can call them that, were not properly compensated for me to make that move. All right, so that's the third point here, which that says that we should consider the complete compensation package, inclusive of bonuses, benefits, growth opportunities. On the point of growth opportunities, subsequent to actually staying in my organization, I was promoted, and the amount that I'm getting now is on par with what they were offering, except I'm still working from home. I'm still not having to deal with traffic. My transportation cost has not increased. And overall, the quality of my work-life balance is somewhat maintained better in my current role. These are tips that we would have spoken to earlier in terms of your salary negotiation. So you want to practice, focus on the value, this is one that we haven't spoken about. Determine what is your walkaway number. So you want to ensure that you have a number that you are willing to walk away if they're not able to come up to that number. So that would be your walkaway number or your hard limit then. If you give me a minute. All right, guys, just give me 1 second. Okay, thanks, guys. So the other strategy that we spoke of was to actually take on more responsibilities. Again, I'm using me as the example because this is what I did. So, and in fact, the example I used earlier whilst I work at the nuclear center is a workable example here. But there are other examples I could use, such as I worked at another financial institution, an investment house, and one of the things they wanted to do was to launch a newsletter. So I took it upon myself to basically lead that effort. And that was just one instance in which I identified something that the company wanted to do and basically decided to spearhead the effort. That, of course, would have additional benefits because that newsletter that we prepared and subsequently distributed is one of the major accomplishments that I now list on my resume, despite the fact that I was only at that organization for about 3 months. Let's talk about switching jobs, which is exactly why I stayed at that organization for only 3 months. So oftentimes what you can do is also look outside of your current company as a way to increase your income. It is a relatively well-known fact that persons who switch jobs on average earn about 50% more over the life of their career as opposed to persons who stay in their organization. And one of the reasons for that is typically when you're switching jobs, you are going to negotiate a better salary. And that could be anywhere on the order of 10 to 30% more net. Whereas if you're supposed to stay in your own organization, your promotion might be between 5 and 10%, and your normal inflation adjustment to your salary could be between 1 and 2.5%. So you can appreciate how switching jobs is a really practical way of increasing your income. I put this point here, always be interviewing, because that is something that I truly believe in. I don't have open to work on my LinkedIn status, but I am always connecting with different persons in different organizations, having casual conversations, going to networking events, and I'm always really interviewing, whether it's a formal or an informal interview. And you interviewing is not just you sitting in front of a person and them asking you questions. You interviewing could be you talking to another person and getting an idea as to what's going on in their company. What are the initiatives that they are undertaking? What are some of the things that they're looking to do? And can your skill set fit into that ecosystem, allowing you to provide value? A few considerations if you're going to switch jobs. You want to get an idea as to the company culture. So ensure that the culture fits and is aligned with your personal values. You want to look at long-term growth potential and other advancement opportunities. So sometimes it's been beneficial to really leave a larger organization and go into a smaller organization, simply because there is more opportunity for growth. An example here is I was with a small brokerage house that was looking to go public, and I worked on that deal. That company, had it gone public, would have seen a massive increase in the amount of capital they had to deploy against their growth initiatives. And with that would have come opportunities for me to grow into either a senior analyst role or an assistant manager role within that organization. You want to look at how you can develop your skills and continue to improve your body of knowledge, both from the soft skill side and the practical/tactical skill side. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on down in this presentation. And then you also want to consider commuting time. I spoke to this before with that decision to switch. Work-life balance, industry stability, and the future outlook of the industry. Strategy 5, in looking at those industries, can you switch industries as a whole? Again, this is something I've done. If you've known me for a while, you probably know that I started out in research and development, and I mentioned working at a nuclear facility, and then I switched into finance. And one of the reasons for that was because the growth opportunities in finance were far more obvious to me than was the growth opportunity in nuclear physics. As an example, the industry that I'm in now, finance, has really grown over the last few years, with even a lot of new companies being established. So like Cygnus, for example, is a relatively new company, and they would have grown their assets from about 50 million to now 180 something million. Compare that to the organization I was with before, the nuclear facility. Their clientele at the time was around 130, and today it's only about 150. So you see the difference in terms of the opportunities for growth across those two industries. In switching industries, one of the things you want to do is to continuously develop your transferable skills. A lot of these are going to be a soft skill, so like being able to present, being able to sell, communicate your ideas. But also there are hard skills, so like project management, data analysis, your problem solving skills, and your technical proficiency. These are things that are going to translate from industry to industry. And then another strategy I have for switching industries is what I call the 5 C's for building credibility. So number one is creation. Before you switch industries, start whilst you're in your existing industry to build out a portfolio of information or content around the industry that you're interested in. If you've known me for a while, this is something that I did. I started writing on the stock market. I started writing on personal finance long before I was employed to a financial institution. Contribution. You want to volunteer in your target industry or add to the literature that is there. So whether that is making comments on the articles that are posted, you can do this on the different forums that they might have for the industry. Or it could simply be attending like their seminars, attending the conferences, and so on. That also plays into community, which is the next one. So join industry groups, network in these groups, and also network in the areas that the persons in this industry congregate, and be active and get your name known within the industry is really what this one is about. Obtain certifications. We're going to talk about that as well. And lastly, communication. You want to develop your personal brand and align it with the industry that you're looking to transition into. And I'll add one last point here. Switching industries doesn't necessarily mean coming outside of your key area of expertise completely. It could simply mean that you are applying the knowledge that you have within your key area of expertise to a new industry. An example of that might be using your ability to code in finance, which is something, again, I've done. All right. Another strategy in terms of increasing your income would be to monetize your hobby. So I put Chrissy's coils here. Chrissy is an entrepreneur that I met about 7 years ago. And at the time, she was just starting this business called Chrissy's Coils, where she basically, and these are hand wound, by the way. So these are unique art that she would create. And she would basically wind the wire herself to create the shapes. And she would sell earrings, bracelets, necklace, pendants, and so on. But she went about her business the right way. And I think she actually created a really good blueprint. So number one, she assessed the market demand for what she was doing. So she was at almost every entrepreneur meetup that I would attend. And I would just go there and see her there. And she would always take the opportunity to discuss what she's looking to launch and even ask persons if they would be interested. So she was doing market survey in all of these little pockets. And then she started out small. So she started selling to friends and family and in her community before she even created the Instagram page. The next part of this strategy is, of course, to create a simple business model. Of course, she was able to refine it the more she spoke at these entrepreneur conferences and seminars, or just the meetups. And then she built the online presence. So she built out the social media. Her website, I think, was launched maybe 4 years ago. And with that, there's actually an online marketplace now where persons can go and purchase her products. Like I said, she built it out in the right way. And of course, she gathers testimonials and she reinvests in her business to improve the quality and the scale at which she's growing. Other examples of hobbies that you can turn into income: photography. So some persons are good at that. The person who's actually photographing my wedding started out with photography as a hobby. He was a programmer before, and he just took up a camera and started taking photos, posting them on Facebook. Somebody reached out to him and asked him if he wanted to photograph their wedding. And he tells the story that he responded to the person to say, look, I've never done weddings. This is the first one I'm going to do. And really, you are going to be the guinea pig. And he went, he did it. The person loved it. A second person reached out to him and he says, I've only done one wedding before. You're going to be my second. So you're going to be the guinea pig. And that's how we continued to the third, to the fourth. And now he's one of the largest independent photographers for weddings. I guess I could plug his name here. So his studio is called Chris Colliard Photography. And he has amassed a massive social media following. And it all started from just picking up a camera. That was his hobby. I mentioned Chrissy, that's craft. And another business could be tutoring. So this is something that a person who is just graduating from high school or university could do. So was there a specific subject that you were excellent at and you knew the subject so well that you could teach it? Can you help persons in preparing for the different exams? It could be the SATs, it could be the ACCA, it could be the CFA, whichever one of those niche exams, or it could simply be different courses within the university curriculum. Language instruction is another thing that you can do. If you are bilingual, you can offer to teach persons English or teach them the other language that you know. So I have a friend that recently migrated to Japan to teach English in Japan, and she is both a Spanish speaker and an English speaker. And lastly, another strategy is for you to basically enter the gig economy. So there is Uber, there is, I think I can go over to here. Right, so there is Uber, there's Gage Pro, there's InDrive. You can also look to food delivery, whether it's Doorstep, Seven Crave, Quick Cart. There are also home services that you can do. So there's this one guy that is continuously running promotions on Instagram. And what he does is he bought, I think it's a steam cleaner machine. And what he does is he offers like sofa cleaning. So he'll come in, clean your sofas or whatever other furniture you want. And of course, most of you would have also seen the people who now do auto detailing in Jamaica. So they buy the pump and all of that, and they set up their own auto detailing outfit. Of course, there are virtual gigs, so you can do stuff like data entry, transcription, be a VA, content moderation, and you can do all of these services through Fiverr. So those are the strategies that you can use if you're an employee in order to increase your income. So we would have talked through staying in your current role and asking for a raise, adopting new responsibilities, or doing the certifications to get a promotion. Or you can switch jobs, or you can switch industries as a whole. So let's look at the person who is a recent graduate. And we just came off using like the gig economy or starting out using those courses that you would have been really good at in university and then offering tutoring services. So as a graduate, I'm going to go through 4 strategies. You can volunteer strategically. Again, something that I did. You can take on internships. You can look to become an apprentice for a specialized skill, or you can look to monetize your hobby. And I'm going to run over monetizing your hobby because we spoke about that already. So volunteering strategically. Whilst I was in university, one of the things that I did was I realized that the physics department always has a physics summer camp. And so I approached the then scientific officer in charge of that summer camp and asked her if I could assist, if I could just help out whilst they were setting up for the summer and all of that. I mean, no, hardly anybody says no to a volunteer, free work. So of course they obliged, and out of that, I was able to secure a position as a lab demonstrator in my third year of university. Small money, but it got me from basically zero up to making a relatively decent stipend. So a few things you can do when you're looking to volunteer in order to be strategic. You want to choose organizations that are aligned with your career goal. And at the time, my objective was to work in physics and then work at the nuclear center. So that alignment was there. You can seek roles that will develop in-demand skills in your field. So if you want to be a programmer, volunteer with one of what's the name of it? That government organization that does programming.
eGov, but I changed the name to JAM ICT.
Thank you. Perfect. That one. Right. You also want to volunteer where the decision makers are either the industry leaders, or they are the persons who basically have the ability to introduce you to industry leaders. So again, in my case, I worked with the scientific officer. She introduced me to the head of department. The head of the department was the one who actually made the introduction to the director general of iSense that got me that role. Take on visible, high impact projects. Again, the summer school is one of those projects. We had hundreds of students coming in over the summer from all over Jamaica. So it was very high visibility, very high impact. And then you want to document your contributions and add these things to your resume. Lastly, you want to build genuine relationships with the staff and with the other persons that you are volunteering with. Like I said, I would have volunteered with the scientific officer, but I built a really good relationship with basically the entire staff of the physics department. And so even today, I am very close. In fact, one of my mentors is a senior lecturer in the department. So very, very close relationships would have manifested from taking that initiative and volunteering. I walked through the case study already, and you guys can see it on screen. So like I said, I started volunteering with the physics summer camp. I should have skipped the slide earlier. Another thing that you can do is to take on internships. And with internships, some of them will actually pay you, but the main objective in taking on your internships ought to be to learn. However, you want to approach your internships with the same attitude as a full-time employee. What that means is, not because you're an intern means you're going to come in at 9 o'clock when work starts 8:30, or you're going to run out of the office at 3:30 because you're not getting paid. The attitude of an intern is one of the major determinants for the major stakeholders in determining whether or not they will actually, one, either accept that intern again, two, write them a letter of recommendation, or three, consider them for a full-time role. So it's very important to adopt the attitude of a full-time employee even whilst doing your internship. And that means also being open to giving ideas, to expressing concern, treating the business as though you are being paid from the activities of the business. So I'll quickly run through some of the other points. The benefits to be accrued from really going through multiple internships. If you explore different industries, that will give you a broader cross section of jobs, of roles, of companies before you even decide on your career path. You might even build up a set of skills that allows you to navigate different industries. So whilst you're on an internship, you'll also develop those soft skills. So being able to interact in a team setting, being a team player, opposing an idea or objecting to an idea, but doing so in a tactful way. All of these things come together to really form you as a rounded individual when you step into your into a professional role. Now let's look at how you convert those internship into full-time offers. And I spoke to it. You want to treat the internship as your full-time day job. So punctuality is important. Dressing the part is important. Being professional is important. Taking initiative is important. And then whilst you're there, cultivate relationships. So try to find a mentor within the organization. And this is a big part. If you can find a mentor who will become an advocate for you, you just improve the probability of you either securing a full-time position in that role or getting somebody to write you a recommendation for you to take to another organization that you might be interested in. Another thing that you can do is if you want to work in that company, make your intention clear. So whilst you would have been accepted as an intern, let HR know that should any positions open up, you are open to actually taking on those positions, whether or not they are directly aligned with what you immediately want to do. Sometimes getting your foot in the door is really half the battle. The last one is kind of similar to internships, but it's to become an apprentice. The major difference between being an intern and an apprentice is that one, with an apprenticeship, you're ideally looking for somebody with a very unique skill set. I'll give you an example. So in Jamaica right now, there are very few people who can fix the ECUs on trucks, as an example. So like the big trucks that are used to either carry bauxite to and from the bauxite plant, the bauxite plants. There are very few people with the skill set. The trucks are called Euclides, and very few people know how to program those trucks or can work on them. So that's a perfect person to become an apprentice for. The other thing is that that person is very well paid. So as his apprentice, you can be well compensated if you are successful in getting the role as their apprentice and then eventually taking over the business. As talking about taking over the business, whilst you're an apprentice, what you can do is to study that business and find out specific ways that you can improve the business, whether it's to add efficiency, integrate technology, or expand the market. So for example, the Euclid trucks are very similar to the trucks that might be used to carry gas. Those trucks, that might be an area where I'm going to use the word master because apprentice master, but where the master might not be looking. But if you can point to him and say, look, but the technology is similar, and you can now enter this market, that's a way that you can even carve out a niche for yourself within your apprenticeship. And then you want to present your ideas, demonstrating the fact that you want to build the relationship and in such a way that it's going to be mutually beneficial. Lastly, and this follows from the internship point, you want to commit fully to your apprenticeship in much the same way you would your full-time job. And you're going to take the same approach. You're going to set clear expectations about your responsibilities. You're going to approach it in the sense that um, you're taking this on as like a full-time position. You want to document your progress and your contributions and also build out your own portfolio of achievements whilst you are an apprentice. Spent a little bit more time on that than I would have wanted. So because we talked about hobbies before, I'm just going to focus on the last part of this slide, which talks about building an audience, which is the last, this fifth step in that process. So few things that you can do. You can create TikTok videos, you can create YouTube videos, post on Instagram. This could be simply educational, informational, or statistical information about the area that you're interested in. And then, of course, you can, this is kind of a new one, but Twitch is something that you can now do in terms of live demonstration. So you can create a Twitch channel where you are showing people how you, say, for example, create origami, if that is your hobby. And from that, persons may make orders. I love die-cast cars. And there's this guy on, well, he has a Twitch channel, but he's also on Instagram, that he makes die-cast models of different vehicles. And they sell for sometimes $250. And because his demand is so high, that's why his price is so high. I have still yet to buy one of them simply because of the demand and the price. But it's just showing you that there are things that you can do. You can monetize your hobbies. All right, so quick intermission. And I'm going to go very quickly through here because we're at 8:15. Certifications. This is one of the better known ways for you to actually break into an industry or increase your income whilst you're in an industry. And there are a few places that you can do this. Jumping down, well, I spoke to why it might be important. So there are a few places that you can do this. You can look at certifications in technology. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can look at technology, healthcare, project management, finance, and they're on the screen for you to see the different certifications that you can achieve. I know for a fact that there are people here who would have attained different certifications and that has significantly increased their income. And I'll leave that there. All right. In terms of planning for your certifications, of course, you need a plan. So here is a framework that you can use. You want to set a timeline for the certification that you're going to pursue. Gather your resources, build a support network. This is super important, especially for me when I was just going into finance. I connected with every single person that was working at the major financial institutions that I was interested in. And even today, I'm still connecting with persons in finance and in adjacent fields to finance. You want to establish a study routine, and of course, you want to track your progress. On this last point, a lot of the platforms will actually track your progress for you in that they give you percentage completion to tell you how close you are to attaining your certification. In terms of how you would finance it, here are a few ideas. You can look at an employee sponsorship. I can tell you for finance that some employers will fund you getting your ACCA, your FMVA, CBCA, CFA, CPA, whichever one it is you might choose. You can also look at scholarships. Some of the organizations that offer the certifications actually have something called I think it's called a power dollar parity or power parity, where if you're in a developed nation, they will give you a discount, a significant discount, I should add, on the cost of the certification. CFI does this, CFA does this, I think FRM also does this. I'm not sure about the Project Management Institute. Another thing that you can do is you can fund it from a windfall. So if, for example, you go through a summer program or summer internship and you're a recent graduate, then you can use that money to fund your certification. You can also use a bonus, or if you get you're a student, university student, and you go on work and travel, a good investment would be to use some of that funds to pursue a certification, even whilst you're still going through your undergraduate degree. And basically, this is the summary of it. So what is getting certifications going to do? It's going to boost your credibility. It's going to allow you to leverage it for advancement. You can also use your certification to launch your own business. Case in point would be me, as well as you can look at other ways to monetize the knowledge that you'd have gained through your certification. So you can create ebooks, sell coaching services, as well as you can also create your own certification course. Sources of certification, these I'm going lightning fast through these. Coursera, edX, Google Digital Garage, LinkedIn Learning, OpenLearn, which is a UK based, Allison, FutureLearn, I think this is also UK based, IBM, and I mean with data analytics, data science, cybersecurity, cloud computing, and AI and machine learning being the big things now, this is one area that I'll go as far as to say I'm confident you cannot lose if you get a certification in any one of these 4 or 5 categories. I'm in finance and we're actually using AI now and data science more than we're using the academics of finance, because we have so much data that we're looking at. Instead of just really assessing credit and stuff like that, we're looking at analyzing the millions of credits that we would have distributed over the years as a financial institution. Last few slides, just let me check where we are. We're at 39 and there are 55 slides. So basically 15 slides. So if you bear with me for the next 15 minutes, we'll be out of here with this. And for this section, we're looking at boosting your income as an entrepreneur. Jump through here, we'd have talked to that. Freelancing online. So increasing your income as an entrepreneur. So how can you increase your income if you're an entrepreneur? There are a few obvious ways. I know that some of you will easily pick them up, but hopefully in going through this, I can share with you 1 or 2 unique strategies, right? The first one, of course, is for you to create a variety in your offers. So 3 different tiers, and you see this at Starbucks. So you can either buy the small, the medium, or the large matcha, if that's your thing, right? But similarly, when you are creating your offer as an entrepreneur, have a low ticket item, have a mid ticket or a mid-tier item that allows persons to get either your standard service with some amount of personalization or some amount of unique access that they wouldn't normally be getting at the lower tier. And then you can offer a premium solution, which of course you would charge significantly higher for. and would probably be your most involved offer. Other things that you can do, you can bundle complementary services. You can look in terms of your low ticket items, you can look to develop digital products that are associated with your main offer. So whether it's a short ebook, you guys would know that I have one of those. It's literally the entry point for working with me. You can develop templates, you can develop your own courses, as well as you can use the information that you would have gained through your studies to create a unique offer that is steered towards a specific individual. And actually that leads me to point number 2, creating a niche market for yourself. So my mentor always talks about finding your tribe or finding your people. And what he means by that is there's a difference between the persons who will use your service and the persons who will pay for your service. Your people, if you're building a business, are the people that will pay for you. And surely you can convert some of the persons who will use your free stuff. But oftentimes, if you're able to create a niche market, you will have a significantly higher conversion from users to customers. And so you want to identify that niche. You want to tailor your messaging. So you're not going to speak to your niche market the same way that you would speak to the general populace. They are going to have a specific jargon that they might use. And so you can, if you're in advertising, you can talk about total addressable market. You can talk about return on investment. You can talk about return on advertising spend, stuff like that, which you wouldn't normally say to the average person that is just looking to put out flyers. And of course, the other thing that you want to do is if you're going into a niche market, you want to go as deep into that market as you possibly can. So do very meticulous research, conduct surveys, get in front of the people who you want to sell and speak to them, get a deep understanding of what their pain points are and their desires, because that's how you'll be able to design your product. Easy way, again, a very simple strategy for increasing your income if you're an entrepreneur, raise your prices. There's a strategy to this. A good way to know if you're charging enough is to raise your prices gradually and see where you get a 30% fall off in your customers. That is where your baseline price should be. If you know I think it's called the Pareto principle, where it is 20% of your customers that you earn 80% of your revenue from, you want to continue to trim the remaining 80% and basically broaden the 20%. And a good way to do that is to continuously increase your prices. Another obvious way to increase your income as an entrepreneur is to cut unnecessary expenses. I can tell you that since I have started doing personal financial makeover, I've probably added 5 or so new subscriptions that after the course ends, I might not be using. So I would then need to go in and do an audit of those subscriptions. Another thing that you can do is you can outsource some of the high value tasks that you do to platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, Freelance, etc. And you will often be able to get the same output or sometimes even better quality output at a significantly lower cost. The cost in this case is the cost to you, the entrepreneur. Sometimes your best use of time is not in doing the menial task. And by menial, I mean the low value tasks that do not directly influence your revenues. A case in point might be creating social media posts. That doesn't have the same level of impact on your revenue as meeting with a prospect, for example. So if you can pay $20 a week to get all of your social media content done on Fiverr. That's a far better spend for you than you taking an hour out of your day to create your social media content. And of course, expense tracking is another thing. Strategy 5, and I love this one, collaborate with other entrepreneurs. So if you are a website designer, perfect person for you to collaborate with would be a digital, what are they? Digital artists? The name escapes me. I'm trying to remember. Mm, Somebody can help me out with this. I'm trying to remember the name, but I've been going so fast. Um, I can't pull it. It's literally on the tip of my tongue. I can't pull it. But basically, those persons who make um like flyers and so on, that would be a perfect person for you to collaborate with because they have clients that they are often doing those gigs for. One of those clients might be very much interested in getting a landing page designed for their party that they might be promoting or their event. So you want to continuously collaborate with other entrepreneurs that are in the same industry as you or in adjacent industries. The other thing that you can do, and this is something that I learned from, I think the book was, it's a book on, I think it's Sam Walton's Made in America. Double your marketing spend. If you want, there's a statistic that says if you want to double your revenues, you have to triple the amount that you spend on marketing. It's it's something that you would have heard, you probably would have heard Gary Vee talk about, and it's why they spend so much on marketing. But a great way to increase your revenues, and I mean, it sort of is very intuitive, is to increase the amount of persons that see your offering, thus your marketing spend. So if you can do that and then attach tracking on that initiative. So if you are going to then implement stuff like retargeting, or you're going to track your ROI on your Google ads and your other social media websites, and then formulate a strategy around that so that you know who is seeing your content, and then you can retarget those people, or you can target a lookalike audience. Those are things that are going to have a direct impact on the amount of money that you're generating in your business. All right, so I think that's the last slide now. So that's basically it. So we would have covered in this session, we'd have looked at the income types. We'd have also looked at the different strategic approaches that one can take to increase their income, whether they are an employee, a recent graduate, or an entrepreneur. And you'll notice that some of these strategies you can actually employ regardless of which category you fall into. And lastly, we spoke about how you can use certifications to increase your income. So with that said, I'm going to just add a few closing thoughts. And the main one is this. Most persons, when they're looking at their budget, they tend to focus on the expense side. Even us, when we started Personal Financial Makeover, we looked first at the expense side. And I would have explained why I took that approach. But equally, you can look at the income side. And what you find is that if you are proactive, you have just as much control on the income side as you might on the expense side. So in closing, 3 things that you can do. Number 1, be proactive. So take deliberate action in terms of identifying either certifications or avenues wherein you can add value. This is whether you are an entrepreneur, an employee, a student, graduate, intern, apprentice. Look for areas where you can add value, because oftentimes that's going to come back to you in the form of increased income. And then be determined. Increasing your income it can be achieved in a relatively short time. A lot of certifications are about 6 months, but approach it with a 1 year time horizon and see how much can you achieve in terms of strategies that you can actually deploy and increase your income over that 1 year time span. And then lastly, you want to be consistent with it. If you start a YouTube channel and you've earned your first check, I can tell you from experience that if you stop producing content on that channel, you're going to eventually lose the monetization and be kicked out of the YouTube partner program. And so you're going to basically have to start over from scratch. So consistency is extremely important. And this is also going to follow through even in the case of an employee. The reward often for good work as an employee is more work. And so you have to maintain that attitude of continuous professional development if you want to continuously improve your earnings over the lifetime of your career. So with that said, I'm going to stop the recording here and we can